so many people ask us, why did you come to Spain? What are you doing here? So I just, after some prayer, really felt to do a kind of documentary thing. So welcome. Yeah, really, this whole thing started when we were out in Australia serving the Lord. And we just got this sort of a vision, really, a vision of setting up a place that would be holding and be the presence for God. It wouldn't be a normal church setup. It would be a place where people could come and just rest in his presence, a place in nature which had animals, and people could just come and stay if they needed a home or if they needed help or healing. And yeah, we didn't know where that was meant to be yet, but the Lord had laid this on our heart. And at the same time he also started giving Paul this real thirst for the scriptures, real hunger to know God's word. In Australia, we had people open their homes to us, so we stayed with them for free. We were given food, we were given cars, the Lord just piled his grace on us. We didn't have anything, and yet we had everything. And we really started experience a deeper level of faith and trust in God. And it really took us away from everything we kind of learnt. The whole experience of Australia was about a new faith, a new way. And the only way I can describe it is it being like the book of Acts, the early church, where they shared everything and no one has any need. And that's what we experienced out there. So we really felt it was so different from our church experience back home in England and the Western culture, that we had this burden on us to create something new. So in Australia we had this vision, but also we really felt that Lord wanted us to go back to England to do a loft conversion on our house. He wanted us to do our house up, so then we'd be able to sell it, make some money, so we'd be able to buy the place that he had, for the vision that he'd set for us, this retreat place, whatever it was. We had a 2-bedroom bungalow at that time in England, and we had baby Zek on the way. So also Paul was just getting really, really more into the scriptures and really thirsty to know God's words and learn it properly and study it. And he really felt that he needed to go off to Bible college, that the Lord was taking him there. So we came back to England and we got on with that, as well as having the baby, little Zek, and we did the loft conversion and we did up the whole house. And Paul got a placement. He got into Bible college, and all very last minute. Actually, the first year Zek was born, it was a bit crazy because we really felt, his name, his God-given name, Zechariah Billy Muzzle. Oh, sorry, that's the dogs. Was, so significant, and that actually the prophecy over Zek was that he would be part of leading the Jews back to the Messiah, so to help the Jews recognise that Jesus is a Messiah. So our first trip abroad, when Zek was 1 year old, we took him to Israel, and that was his first abroad trip when he was 1, and he walked up and down the plane, learning to walk on the way. And that was an ordeal in itself as well, just getting there. So we knew the end was coming, because the prophecy about Zek and in his lifetime was weird. We didn't ever think about that before we went to Israel. I guess end times were kind of in the back of our mind as well. Australia had changed our faith, and then we suddenly went to Israel, and the Lord put on our hearts so strong to go to Israel with this boy of ours, that when we got there and we started, walking all the places that Jesus went, it really, again, transformed us. It just challenged us so massively. I mean, you go to Israel, it's like Jesus coming back tomorrow, and so we knew that there was something bigger going on, something deeper, and that it's still going on now, and this is just a part of whatever is to come. Rather scary, but quite exciting too. Zechariah means the Lord has remembered. The Lord remembers. and we felt the Lord was saying, I remember my people, as in the Jews. And Billy was after Billy Graham. It was after Billy, the dog that we stayed with in Australia when we were pregnant. It was after Puffin Billy that we went on the train, but also my granddad Billy. But the name Billy is a strong name, and it means the Lord protects. And we felt the Lord through, that Zek, something to do with the Jews, but the Lord was reminding us that he loves his people, that Israel is firstborn child, and that he is remembering them and protecting them. So a day is coming that he will gather them back, and it will be coming really soon. I believe so. We got this placement at St Mary's, which is a Church of England church in Worthing, in Broadwater, Worthing. So that was quite a surprise, because we'd not worked for Church of England before, and I'd only known it from when I was a child. We'd been working for Methodist Church, been in Baptist, New Frontiers, experienced lots of different denominations, but Church of England was always the kind of one that we didn't want to get in. It seemed too political, and quite middle class from what I remember, and I wasn't keen. But nevertheless, the Lord took us there, and we had a great time serving there. Some really hard times as well, but these 3 years Paul did his Bible college, and we worked for this church. And in the summers, in the whatever holiday we were going on, we were exploring sort of Europe and where God was leading us, because this thing hadn't left us, and it felt like it was growing and growing. So we went to France for the summer, but didn't feel anything there. We went to Italy. We went to Greece. We decided to go to Europe. When you've been in Australia a bit and you've lived in England before, you realise how close Europe is on the doorstep of England. And we almost kicked ourselves that we hadn't. I'd always been on these long haul flights and everything, and not really seen anything of all the countries on my doorstep. So we went round, and then we contemplated Spain again. Spain was always in my mind because I'm really comfortable with Spain. Spain I grew up with because we came here every year since I was a child, really. A couple of times a year. My parents had a couple of timeshares. We were back and forth and, had lovely holidays. And I've been in a lot of Spain. And when I was 20 years old, I just wasn't a Christian, but I just randomly upped and went to Spain to do a degree in Salamanca in Spanish, because I just love the language and the culture. And also I worked in Tenerife for a bit as well when I was 18. So there were lots of connections with me in Spain, but I didn't want to think of Spain because it felt like I wanted to be there, not maybe God wanted us to be here. Paul was happy to go anywhere it was warm. After Australia, we really liked the climate and we were very comfortable with that. So yeah, we couldn't move straight into our new house because it wasn't ready. So we had like a week where we had to get out of our old house, and we had all our furniture, our cat, and we ended up putting all our furniture and everything into the church hall because actually after Christmas it goes really quiet. So Gary was brilliant. He said, "Look, just keep your stuff here," and then and Paul and the kids stayed at his mum's, and I actually stayed in a rest thing for a couple of nights because I actually had a car crash on the day that we were due to move. Yeah, so the funny thing about buying this house is that we didn't really want to buy it. I actually wanted another house, and God kept blocking it, and it was really driving me mad actually because it was so spacious and I really loved it. But anyway, every time I kind of pushed a door with it, like the most weirdest things would happen, and we looked at other places, and every time I put an offer, they'd just apparently taken off the market, or they weren't for sale anymore, or someone just brought it. It was so this flipping bungalow kept coming back to us, and in the end, we offered on it, and they said no to the price. So I was like, well, we're not paying more than that. And then we waited, and then we lost our first buyer in the other house, you see. And then when the time come, I was like, right, let's push this door again. I keep having visions of this house. I think God wants us to have it. So we ended up getting it at the same price that we offered a few months before. They took it this time. And what's really weird is that so we moved in just at the beginning of January, and then in February there was that awful helicopter crash in the Grand Canyon, which three Worthing young people died, and two sons were pastor's sons from Worthing, and there was the girl, yeah, the girlfriend of one of them was there as well, and she died. And it was really weird because actually our next door neighbour attached to us in the bungalow, she was the boss of the girl that died. And it was like that day, it was really weird because this awful feeling come over me, and I just felt Holy Spirit say, you need to go next door and pray for her and be with her. And I'd never even, like, we'd only been there a month, so I'd only really said hello and, well, nothing really. And so I went round, just knocked on her door, and this tear-stricken, in shock lady opened the door, and I was like, look, hiya, I'm your neighbour. The Lord sent me to pray for you, and it was amazing. So if it was only for that reason that we moved into that house, that was enough for us. Ministry. God will call you places, put you in situations to be like an angel, to minister to someone, to bring the right word, to just pray for them. And so we were there to support her and bring God's presence and into that. And I think, a lot of people would share testimonies about that time and how strong, how God was kind of in it, in the comforting, I would say, definitely. Even, Gary went to the funeral, and before the funeral started, we were in the pub chatting about baptisms, and there were some blokes in there, drinking before, and we happened to start chatting to them, and they ended up saying about their mates, being killed, and that they were going to the funeral. So we ended up sharing about God with them at that time. So it was, a special time, a difficult time for a lot of people, but a special time for the presence of God to be really manifest, I think. So we're in that house. We were only in there a year, and we were building it because it only had 2 bedrooms. So Paul and I slept in like the lounge. We took down walls. We did the bathroom. We did so much work. Paul took a year out. He just finished Bible college, and brain was a wreck, working at St Mary's and Bible college together. So he just wanted space. So he was building this house, and kitchen, everything. We had the floor ripped up. We had the walls, and we're all living in it. It was awful. I never want to live in a do-upper again. We just kept saying we never want to do up another house. And we had an amazing time at church as well. So in my job, which was brilliant. we had I had a really good time because I just had the freedom to just do what I felt the Lord say to do, and it was amazing. We just saw so many people, yeah, and just incredible. But we weren't in a rich area. We weren't making money. We were serving the poor. We were serving the lost, and all good things must come to an end, apparently. And so it was approaching the end of my year there. I was meant to be on a contract for 3 years at the church when they first offered it to me. They had people, I don't know who it was, I still don't know, who pledged money for my role and just me to be employed. It's all very weird. And then Gary had to come to me and say, look, Chris, I'm really sorry, but things are changing, and we can only do a year because there's going to be a lot of change, and let's just make it the best year ever. So I agreed to work with him, and yeah, we had this hanging over us, obviously. Yeah, I just basically, well, I think it was, must have been, I don't know when it was, but we didn't have like a weekly prayer meeting, and I love prayer meetings. I think you shouldn't have a church running unless you've got a prayer meeting, because everything needs to come out of prayer. And obviously I did a lot of personal prayer, and everyone prayed, separately, and we prayed before the services, and there was a lot of prayer going on, like home groups and stuff, but we didn't as a church gather together for corporate prayer. So I started up a weekly prayer meeting, and the first night we had quite a few people turn up, and it was really good. And then I went home and went to bed, but at like midnight I'd just done a hot water bottle, and at midnight I got up to get something, came back in the bed, and managed to like sit down or something, and the hot water bottle like split in two, like from the middle, and it basically went all over my leg, and I ended up having a severe second and third degree burn in my leg, down my left leg, which was probably the most awful thing that's happened to me, and I've had a few things happen to me. So I didn't know at the time, but basically, because it healed, everyone was praying for me, which was amazing, and I didn't want to not go to work and have these weeks off, because they're saying, well, the first it burns for 72 hours, and then yeah. That word really scared me. It really shook me to the core and gave me this really holy fear of God. and of what was coming, and what is coming to those who are going to perish. You know, it says a second death, people be thrown into the lake of fire, and I could not imagine. I could not contemplate like that, and if there was any way like I could stop that happening to someone, then I knew I had to do something. And I think it spurred me, just something inside me, like something really changed anyway from the burn internally, and I'll explain later on with my health. But I guess the evangelism, the purpose, the reason for being alive really, like the fire inside me, oddly, when I was on fire, really, just the fire inside was set alight. You know, there's people actually going to go to hell. Hell is real. Like, we need to stop messing about this. You know, people are just taking their salvation for granted, and people are just messing about, thinking they've got all the time in the world, whereas no, Jesus is very clear. The Bible is very clear. And we need to warn people. And so I think,
like, it was very shocking. It's the middle of the night, so you know, to be woken up abruptly to someone screaming and not knowing what happening was yeah, pretty horrible. And then obviously finding out what did happen, then I suppose you go into automatic mode, and yeah, I don't know, it's a bit of a blur, to be honest, but Chris, you know, helping her into the bath and chucking water all over it for ages, and then, you know, needing to phone the hospital, but also get people around to look after the kids, and it all happened very quickly and smoothly, actually, I've got to say, considering the circumstances. And I think the sort of what has actually happened only sort of sinks in very, very gradually. Okay, so we were in hospital with Chris again. Another very traumatic experience for us both in different ways. For Chris, obviously, the immediate pain of everything. For me, just kind of feeling entirely helpless, and seeing someone that I love in pain. So that is a difficult memory.
so yeah, the work continued on a house through April and May and June, and my contract with St Stephen's was due to end in June, so it was all very starting to become a bit tense and a bit yeah, stressful and a bit sad, really, because we still didn't know what God wanted, and the house wasn't finished. And yeah, Gary kept asking me, what do you feel God's saying? And I kept asking him, what do you feel God's saying? And there's loads of things that was going on behind the scenes, a lot of pressure, you know, regarding the Church of England, the bishop, and lots of things like I can't even share now. It was really, really difficult. So not only was I kind of recovering with my leg, which was amazing, because they said it would take like 6 weeks to get new skin, and after 2 weeks I had new skin appearing already. So they were saying, well, your prayers must be working. of all your church and everyone. So yeah, it was at that time that, and I guess partly the reason that I'm doing this in kind of segments is to be able to process really my grief and, you know, what we've actually been through. I didn't want to leave St Stephen's. I didn't want the job to end. I was loving it. I loved my life there. You know, the house, okay. We were working on it so long, but, you know, we made it lovely. And I just couldn't understand why God was going to take all this away from us. And I was really fighting against it. And my name was up on the board outside the church, you know, with the vicar, and then my name underneath as a worker. And then as soon as my contract ended, Gary just took the board down and took my name off. Sorry, they took all the soft play away. They shut the garden down, took all the toys out, started closing all the ministries down that I'd started, and I'd worked so hard, but I loved it. But we had to close the toddler group, and obviously still it causes me a lot of pain. It was just too many things going on at once, so much. I just felt a lot of rejection. That's probably the only word I can say. It was all just happening too fast, and I didn't know what God was doing, and I just felt just such rejection. And like everyone was pushing me away, and I couldn't talk to anyone about it. And I was in this, Paul and I both been put through for ordination to train in the Church of England to become vicars or whatever, priests, as they call it. And Paul, you know, opted out for different reasons than me, but I was still in this discernment process. For 2 years they had me in it, trying to figure out what to do with me, because I wasn't, you know, they again kept asking me, and the problem is that we kept calling, you know, feeling called to mission work, feeling called to overseas. Paul wanted to go to Africa. I kept feeling that God was calling us to Spain, and we just didn't know. So I just stayed in the system, because actually whenever I went through three DDOs, and each time I met one, the Lord would give me like a prophecy for them, or I'd be praying with them, and then, you know, I'd end up sharing with them something, and then I'd end up sort of ministering to them. So I made really good friends out of these DDOs, and they were kind of the only people at the time who I could talk to about, you know, about what was going on for me, because especially in church ways, because I couldn't talk to anyone in the church, because obviously you're a leader, you can't, there weren't a lot of people to talk to. Gary was going through a lot of his own stuff. Yeah, so there was a lot of changes in the parish, and it was really hard on everyone. There'd just been a massive change the year before with the new rector come in. So yeah, anyway, so yeah, it was coming to June. Well, it was June when I finished, and I had to, from sort of Easter time, I had to start shutting down ministries. And all the time we're praying, you know, and I started getting this verse, you know, Matthew 26, and I'll go to someone and ask them for prayer, and they'd get this verse, the same verse, and I was like, what is going on? What is this? And then we just let it tickle through. I think I was just, you know, like, you end up in this numb stage, just letting things happen, because I didn't know how to stop it. So I think I was just feeling so much rejection. I was in such a bad place. I just wanted to escape. I just wanted to get away. And I love mountains, and the verse said flee to the mountains, so I thought, right, we're going to go to the mountains. I love the sound of music, you know. And it was just having that image of the fleeing, and you know, is Jesus coming back soon, or what is this, and how does this, and you know, and then the vision kind of came that this was, we were going to set up a place, and it needs to be in the mountains, but you know, in the mountains and in Spain somewhere. And so yeah, but my head game was just, I need to get out of here, I'm so hurting so much. And for me, when you feel rejection, you have to escape, and it was overwhelming. Every Sunday after my contract ended, I would cry. I'd sit at church and cry. I was thinking this was ridiculous. I couldn't sit through a service without crying. I was completely losing it. There was so much grief, you know, let alone that. And then, you know, suddenly, you know, people in our congregation, a couple of people had cancer, and it just started going horrible. It just started feeling really sad. I just had this overwhelming sadness all the time, and I couldn't escape it. And it was just overwhelming. We ran this kind of thing called Rewire, which is a real service that kind of allows the Holy Spirit to do what he wants to do rather than man interrupting so much. There's a longer time of worship and a talk, and you know, it's great. And that was once a month, and so it happened to be this evening, and I invited her along, but she didn't come. I didn't see her at the beginning or anything. And then it was a great evening, but at the end, obviously, the Spirit was touching people, and I was sitting with a friend, and we were just basically crying, and I was just crying out to God, just saying, what do you want us to do? You know, I'm so sad, please help me. And she was crying too, so we both put our arms around each other and we started praying. And I was praying, Lord, just give me a sign, please. Do you want me to go to Spain? Just give me a sign. And then someone like interrupted us praying. Like, I was just thinking, oh my goodness, I got my eyes shut, and we're obviously praying, and they tapped me on the shoulder and then, Chris, your sister's here. And I was like, and I was so like, can you just not interrupt me praying? Anyway, I was like, what, my sister, what are you talking about? And I looked up and I looked over, and there was this missionary standing there. And it was just so funny, because it was like such a strong sign. I just knew we needed to go to Spain, like now, like soon. And I was just so annoyed about the intro. I was like, Lord, send us a sign, send us a sign. Can you just go away, please? So I'm praying for a sign, and the sign was right there.